So I just saw the new Leigh Whannell movie, The Invisible Man, and it was decent.
He has figured out a way to be invisible.
So again, this is the new movie from director-writer Leigh Whannell, who previously wrote and directed Upgrade, which was a pretty entertaining little action movie that I really liked, honestly. It was a fun action movie with a streamlined premise and some pretty fun action sequences. It wasn't the best thing ever, it wasn't reinventing the wheel or anything like that, but it was fun and I enjoyed it. So of course I was interested in what he was going to make next, and that just so happened to be The Invisible Man. And this movie, again, I liked it, but it's weird, and there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot that I liked, but there's a lot that I disliked, and most of the stuff I disliked is little things, but there's so many little things that they started to compound and become bigger problems for me. So this movie, in a nutshell, is I liked it, but it has a lot of issues. There's a lot to talk about. So before I get to talking about the plot, which is where the majority of my issues lie, let's talk about a few things that I liked about the movie before we get into that, because that's going to take up the majority of this time. To start, I think Leigh Whannell is really coming into his own as a director. I think this movie looks and is operated in a much better way than Upgrade was. I think most of the cinematography and direction here is significantly better, in fact, than Upgrade. I think there are some legitimately impressive shots in this movie. There's a lot of long one-takes that go on for a long time with a lot of coordination that I really liked. There's way better shot staging and blocking. So I definitely commend Leigh Whannell for just completely owning this movie from a directorial standpoint. Plus, the lead performance of Elisabeth Moss and the other side characters are all great. I think the performances here really sell a lot of this movie. Without Elisabeth Moss, I think a lot of this movie would not have worked as well. She does a great job of building tension with her face, with her body movements, with her emotions. She does a really good job of helping you buy into her as a character. And I think without her, a lot of that character would not be as empathetic or as interesting. She really does sell this role.
Go.
I also really love the premise and the action sequences in this movie. The premise is really fun. An invisible man comes and torments this lady until she tries to stop him. And that's pretty much the whole movie in a very, very concise nutshell. Plus, the action sequences, when you actually get to them, it takes a minute, are really entertaining and well done. There's a lot of sequences where Elisabeth Moss is being ripped around rooms, I assume by just these wires pulling her everywhere. There's things getting thrown around. She's fighting with this invisible guy, and it all is really well done. And the action scene near the end in this insane asylum where this invisible guy is taking out all these cops is incredibly satisfying and really well made, really well executed, really entertaining. And it gets incredibly violent, and in a way that I loved. When this movie goes from 0 to 60, it really hits the gas. I mean, this movie gets really violent. So to better explain myself and what I disliked about this movie, let's just go through it beat by beat, because I feel like that's the best way to deconstruct this movie. I think the setup of this movie works pretty well. The opening sequence of her sneaking around her house and pulling out all this stuff that she's hidden to make her escape is really tense and really great. It sets up the location of this house so you know it pretty well because she's going in and out of the rooms, so that when she comes back later, you understand the geography of everything. And there are hiding holes that are set up that are used later. So the setup of the movie, the first scene is amazing. I think it works terrifically well. And then she escapes, she goes off to live with this cop guy, and from there she finds out that this guy that was her husband, Adrian, has killed himself. Her sister comes over and says, he's dead, you know, hi, we can celebrate now that he doesn't have to torment you anymore. and she goes to this lawyer's office where he says, okay, yeah, he's dead, which means you're gonna get $5 million over the course of, I think he says, $100,000 payments every month for a certain amount of months. And she's like, hey, awesome, I'm gonna set up a bank account for my cop's daughter to go to college. I'm gonna get my cop friend a new ladder because he's painting his house and he has a rusty old rickety ladder, and they're celebrating, yay. And then the movie starts to show that this invisible man has made his way into her house. And this is where both the movie turns into what it's going to be and starts having issues with me, because from this point, the movie gets very repetitive for a little bit of time. And in this bit of time, the movie feels like it never ends. There is scene after scene after scene of Elizabeth Moss going to people that care about her and trying to explain her situation and them not believing her. She goes to the cop, he doesn't believe her. She goes to her sister, she doesn't believe her. She tells the cop's daughter, she doesn't believe her. Nobody believes her. She goes to the lawyer, he doesn't believe her. Nobody believes her. And it's scene after scene of this. He's back, he's alive. Oh, I don't believe you. He's alive. I don't believe you. And then there's scene after scene of slightly escalating things where Adrian is invisible and just kind of pestering her. First, a knife is taken off a counter and grease lights on fire, and then he's like in their room taking pictures of her, and he pulls like the sheets off of her, and it's just like these tiny little things over and over and over again. And I started to feel like I was going insane because it felt like the same type of things happening over and over and over again. But then the stupidity starts to creep into this movie, and there isn't a lot of it, but when it rears its head, it's really stupid. There's a scene when she goes to her sister's house and her sister says, you sent me a nasty email. And she's like, no, I didn't. It was Adrian. Of course, she doesn't believe her. So she goes home and she reads the email and she has a breakdown. She's crying on the ground. And this cop daughter comes in and says, I know what you need. We're in hard times. We're gonna have a girls' night. It's gonna be just us and we're gonna have a good time. And Elizabeth Moss goes, yeah, that's an awesome idea. And then the cop's daughter gets hit in the head from the side of her head. And she goes, "Ah, Dad!" And the cop runs in and she's like, "Elizabeth Moss hit me!" And I went, "What? No, she didn't. She's A, across the room, not even close to you, and B, you got hit on the side and back of your head. How did her arm extendo around to hit you on the side of the head from across the room?" So that's stupid, for one. What should have happened was something like, we're gonna have this girls' night. Let me hug you. And then right at that moment, Adrian hits her in the head. Then that's believable. But as it's executed, it doesn't make any sense, especially since Elizabeth Moss is going crazy and telling everyone that will listen that Adrian is invisible and pestering her. And then this girl gets hit in the head while Elizabeth Moss is sitting away from her. So her first instinct isn't to go, oh, she might be right. It's, she hit me. Look, she's on the floor in front of me. She hit me. What?
I'll explain later.
So she's in the house on her own and she pours out this coffee on the floor so that she can see if he's walking towards her. And he doesn't because he's smart. And so she goes, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna call his phone. And I go, great idea. She calls his phone and it just so happens to be in the same house she's in the attic. So she goes up to the attic, she finds the phone, and she grabs it and she sees that he's taken pictures of her in her sleep, her and the cop daughter. And I went, that's brilliant. She's gonna use the phone and show the cop and say, who would have taken these pictures if it wasn't for Adrian? You didn't, I didn't, your daughter didn't. She's in the photo. Who would have done it? But no, she doesn't do that. She leaves the phone there for no reason at all. The phone is there, the keys to the guy's house are there, and his little book of like blueprints is there, and she leaves it all there, and after that scene, the movie forgets it exists. And at no point does she go back to the attic to try and retrieve it and find that it's gone, or she go back to get it to try and prove her innocence, and the phone's wiped or something. Nothing. So, okay, that's dumb, but as she's investigating this phone, he starts creeping up the ladder, Adrian, and she looks down and doesn't see anybody, and she dumps paint on him so you can see him and he runs off. And I went, oh, that was cool, that was a great little effect. And so she's going through the house looking for him with her knife, and then you hear the sink flip on in the kitchen. And I went, don't do that, movie. Please don't say that he managed to clean all the paint off of his suit with a kitchen sink in such a small amount of time that it would give her time to run into the kitchen to not see him. But that's exactly what happens. She runs into the kitchen and she looks in the sink and there's paint in the sink and he's nowhere to be found. And I went, this movie's losing me. This movie is losing me. There is no possible way he could have gotten all the paint off of him in a kitchen sink. It was all over him. How did he do that? But of course the movie says don't think about it, and she progresses to be attacked. She gets attacked by this guy and she kind of fights him off and runs into the road. And she sees a guy, she calls a Lyft driver as she's running down the road, hilariously, and he takes her back to Adrian's house where she wants to investigate a little bit. And at this point in the movie, I started to think about, how is Adrian getting around? He's not driving a car. Is he walking everywhere? Because when she gets in the Lyft driver's car, he says, oh, you want to go to this place? That's pretty far away. And I said, okay, if it's far away, how did Adrian get there? In the first place, did he walk? And is he gonna follow them? Is he gonna walk after them? Or is he like grabbing onto the side of the car? These are things the movie never explains, and these are things that I don't think it wants you to think about. Like little logistical things, but my brain can't help itself because I see something and I wanna know how it works. And there are certain points where I can suspend my disbelief. There are certain points when the movie's lack of an excuse, it works to its benefit, but here, I just can't help but think about these things because there is literally nothing else to think about. Up until this point, the story is absolutely non-existent. It is, girl is attacked by guy who is invisible. That is it. There's nothing else to think about. There's nothing else for me to be able to suspend my disbelief. But this movie never explains anything either, so it's frustrating. So anyway, she gets to his house and she starts poking around and she goes down and finds his invisibility suit place. And she hits this decloak button and she finds that he has conveniently left a second suit in the invisible maker place, and she takes it. And she goes and hides it in one of her hidey hole spots from the first part of the movie. So anyway, he shows up, he kind of bullies her a little bit, she gets out, and the Lyft driver drives her away. And she leaves the second suit in the house. Now, this is the second point of the movie where I said, this is great. She's gonna use that to clear her name, but she leaves it there. Why? She pulls this scheme where she's hiding in the closet, and just as she sees his footprint on the carpet, she runs past him. And I thought, why couldn't she do that with the suit? If she runs out with the suit, then she can prove to everyone that he's made an invisible suit. But she doesn't do that for literally no reason.
Adrian is dead. He's not dead.
But don't think about it, because then one of the best scenes of the movie comes up where she calls her sister to a public diner and she wants to bear all to her. She wants to try and explain herself to her, and then I assume have her come to the house and show her the suit, even though if she had it there with her, it'd make the process a lot easier, but whatever, don't think about it. She ends up at a psych hospital where they're saying, you're mentally unstable. Then she goes into her room at night, and as the door's closed, she says, you're not gonna get this baby, and she proceeds to try and cut her wrists to kill herself. And of course, the Invisible Man's there, and he grabs her, and she goes, ah, there you are, and she starts stabbing him like crazy so that some of his cameras on his invisible suit stop working, which means that he's flickering on and off between invisible and not invisible, so that all these cops that are coming to get her can see him now. So there's an awesome fight sequence where he's taking out all these cops and running away, and she's chasing after him, and she runs into the rain, and he grabs her, and he's like, I'm gonna get that cop daughter now, and it's all gonna be your fault. And she's like, oh no. And so she calls the cop, James, and is like, gotta get to the house. Your daughter's in danger.
Are you okay?
Someone's sitting in that chair.
So the cop gets there right as this invisible guy is choking out his daughter, and he proceeds to get the crap beat out of him because he can't see him. But then Elizabeth Moss runs in right as he's about to get killed, sprays him with a fire extinguisher, and shoots him 4 times in the chest and kills him. And then she takes off the hood, and hey, it's the brother! It's not Adrian! And turns out this was all an elaborate scheme to pin his brother with the murders, which is so stupid. It creates so many more logistical issues that my brain can't help think about. Like how they had photos of Adrian's body with slashed wrists. How did you explain them having a body and an urn full of his ashes if they had the coroner come and then media articles come out about his death? How? How did you manage that? Because Adrian is found in the house, chained up in his basement, and he's like, it wasn't me, it was my brother the whole time, look at me. So how though? How did you fake your death? With, like, I assume there had to be medical personnel that come in and confirm that you were dead, or was it literally just your brother taking a picture of you, pretending to slash your wrist, and then going to Elizabeth Moss and saying, yeah, he's dead. Let's put out a couple fake news articles to these big news outlets somehow. None of it really makes that much sense. None of it really works, but don't think about it. Because the movie's moving on. The movie moves on then to Elizabeth Moss going to Adrian's house. She rolls over to his house, and he has this whole dinner set out for her, right where a security cam is pointed at them. And she's like, you have to admit to me that you are the one tormenting me and not your brother, because I'll never feel safe if you don't trust me. And he goes up to her and he's like, I'd never do anything to harm you. That should come as no surprise. Which the whole movie he's been saying surprise to her every time he pops up. So you're like, oh, it was definitely him. And then she's like, I gotta go wash up, because she's crying. And she goes off, and he's sitting there at the table, and suddenly he grabs a knife, and the knife cuts his throat. And you can obviously assume that Elizabeth Moss has put on this invisible suit and cut his throat. But then she immediately comes out of the bathroom screaming to go and console him as he's dying, and then call the cops so that it looks like he really did just kill himself. Problem is, there are more logical issues here. How on earth was she able to go to this bathroom, get the suit, put the suit on, kill him, run back into the bathroom, and take everything on in time for her to get out to him while he has just killed himself? There is no way that she'd be able to achieve this. No way would she have the time to do any of this. But the movie says, again, don't think about it, because we got this twisted, morbid ending, and it's cool. And it is cool, honestly. It is a good ending. I like this ending. It's just that there are so many things like this where they just don't make sense. They just don't work. I just don't like how it's presenting itself.
What is going on?
There are so many great ideas here, like this ending, that just do not work because of the way they're executed. And that's my biggest problem with it. It has a great premise. It has great performances. It has great camera work. It has great action sequences. It has pretty good visual effects. It has all that you could want, but every little twist and turn that the story tries to take is completely unfounded. It's completely unearned. There's nothing that makes the turn work. Whenever a turn happens, it happens because of some plot contrivance. There is nothing in the story that is really pushing it forward organically. It's all just either repetition or the script inventing some way for the story to move on to the next thing. It's a fine movie. I like it well enough. It's violent, it's entertaining for the most part. It's just that the plot is so contrived that it ended up being kind of difficult to sit through at points. So I'm not sure I can recommend it, even though I did like it. It is just too much to ask me to disbelieve. So at the end of the day, I would probably give this like a 6. I can't go any higher than that, and honestly, I'd probably want to lower it to a 5, but I did have a lot of fun watching some sequences here. There's a lot of stuff I really liked. It's just that there are some stretches where I was bored to tears. So, that's that, I guess. Ugh.